Okay, we've got one more presentation for today, and it's regarding one of our open consultations. I'll be going the presentation. It's the Address Supporting Organization Review Consultation. So let me introduce this. The most recent ASO review concluded with 18 recommendations. ASO review. So the ASO review is the ASO Address Supporting Organization within ICANN. Per agreement with ICANN, the Address Supporting Organization conducts its own periodic review of how it's performing. Does it serve a role within the ICANN structure, and how efficiently does it handle that role? Our last review was in 2013, so it's timely. We just completed a review this year. And it very much is a review focused on the Internet Number Registry System as the ASO within ICANN. And so it deals with how we interact with other organizations. The review was done throughout the course of this year. There were surveys done at ARIN meetings and all the other RIRs. The review report was put out. When the final report came done, it had 18 recommendations, 17 of which were very straightforward, talking about predominantly cleaning up how we communicate, how we operate, procedural issues, and all of those were things that the NRO, the NRO Number Council, and the NRO EC could accept and move ahead with, which we did. The 18th recommendation is the NRO should initiate a public consultation involving the 5 RIR communities to determine the future structure of the ASO. This one's a little more complicated. We did decide to accept the recommendation, and we did launch at the NRO level a consultation on the issues identified in the ASO review report. You can get a copy of the review report at this URL. So each RIR has got its own process for doing its portion of this consultation. Overall, we all have the same scope. It includes the structural implications of the issues in the ASO review, and here are some of the issues that came up. Any updates or adjustments identified as required for ASO review documents. Some cases, documents haven't been updated. Some cases, they may have processes that aren't efficient. Reported confusion of roles between the ASO and the NRO. As people may be aware, the NRO, the 5 RIRs working together, is referred to as the ASO in the ICANN context. Perceived complexity of the relationships among NRO, ASO, and ICANN. Relevance and cost to the IRRs of various ICANN engagement activities. When we send people to ICANN and we participate and we're involved in many ICANN activities, it's a cost. That cost ultimately is borne by the NRO, which allocates it, as Paul said earlier, among the 5 RIRs, which means it's a cost to you. As long as that's a good cost and it's valuable for what we get, it's useful. So ARIN, the NRO EC, looking at the list of scope, posed some questions. What adjustments should be made in order to address the issues highlighted above? Should the adjustments be limited to the NRO MOU, the ASO MOU, and or the ICANN bylaws? Over what time frame should these adjustments be developed or implemented? And what strategic aspects should we pay attention when considering these adjustments? So, ARIN initiated a community consultation on the structural issues identified in the ASO review report. Our consultation's online there. It closes on the 30th of April, which means you've got another 2 weeks. Presently, there's only 2 comments made on our consultation, both to the effect that the ASO is unnecessary, as the primary role of the ASO, forwarding global policy proposals to ratification to the ICANN board, is an extremely rare occurrence. We don't have any other feedback. So that's what we need to address, because all 5 RIRs need to do consultation with their community. We're going to need to figure out how to come up with an overall plan in order to have the RIR community move forward with one voice on how to deal with the ASO. Additional input would be helpful. You can join the consultation list. We take all these matters that aren't policy matters and we run them as suggestions or consultations on the consultation list. It's open to anyone. You don't have to be an ARIN member. So feel free to join in and tell us what you think. Or approach the microphones now. Microphones are now open. Yes.
Owen DeLong, Concerned Internet Citizen.
Okay.
I admit I am not an expert on the post-transition structures, and if anybody else understands them, good for you, please explain them to me. But my limited understanding is that there's this organization, the NRO, which is essentially the 5 RIRs acting in concert, which contracts with this organization called ICANN, which is the legacy domain name management organization that also likes having a contract to do a number of things, which then spun off a subsidiary called Public Technical Identifiers, or post-transition IANA, depending on who you ask, that they subcontract all of the things we pay ICANN as the NRO to do on behalf of the NRO to PTI.
Right.
Why not cut out the middleman, get out of ICANN, and just have the NRO contract with PTI, sever PTI from ICANN, and move on?
So I'm going to answer your question, and I'm going to do it first by explaining a very important detail. So a few years ago, we did the IANA stewardship transition. And in the process of doing the IANA stewardship transition, instead of having U.S. government NTIA contract with ICANN for ICANN to be the IANA numbering services operator, the operator of the IANA central numbering registries, we, the RIRs, collectively now contract for that service with ICANN. Okay, now that was the transition of the operational function of keeping track of those central unallocated registries. And the reason we contracted with ICANN was because NTIA originally contracted with ICANN. At the last minute, not the last minute, when the names community got around to doing its plan, it wanted ICANN to contract with the party administering these registries. Because ICANN was also the party administering these registries, it created an affiliate to make sure that the names community could have ICANN contracting with ICANN. Now, we are still contracting with ICANN. The affiliate is called PTI. We didn't bother to contract with PTI because PTI has no money. PTI has no skin in the game if it fails to deliver. PTI could be dissolved tomorrow and no one could sue it for failing to deliver. ICANN has people, staff, operations, financial reserves. It's a more proven organization than the shell that is PTI, okay? Because PTI, if it failed to deliver, there's nothing there other than what ICANN put into that model. We could transfer our contract directly to PTI. However, none of that is what the ASO consultation about. So the ASO review was talking about the structure by which the 5 RIRs come together and our number council, which is called the ASO-AC in ICANN land, works within ICANN to work on global policy and occasionally send them to the ICANN board for ratification. There hasn't been one in 5 years, I don't think. Participate in all the other ICANN activities, like appointing 2 directors to the ICANN board and participating in the consultations and working groups within ICANN that are available to all the supporting organizations and advisory groups. So it's just this structure that we have for harmonization of global policy and its role within ICANN that the consultation about. None of this affects the SLA operator. We could continue to use ICANN with our service level agreement for the IANA. We could contract to another party when that's up for renewal, contract. None of that would change the relationship we have, the ASO relationship with ICANN, which is about global policy development and ICANN ratification of same. So that relationship, just talking about global policy and the ASO working at ICANN to do global policy development and participating in the other ICANN activities like appointment of the ICANN board, all the things that Paul had in the NRO report, that's what we're talking about in the consultation. Help?
Yes and no.
Without having MC Escher here to like draw it on a chart with 3 dimensions and lines.
Right, and it
it's
is
the best
quite,
I can do.
Quite Escher-esque. Which way are the geese flying?
Right.
So what I'm getting at is the the existence of the ASO as an organization within ICANN is necessitated by the fact that we're contracting with ICANN to contract with this
Nope.
quote-unquote shell.
Different relations. Completely separate relations. If we were having this conversation 5 years from now, we could have, we could have Casey Claffey and CADA doing the IANA number operating, and we'd still have an ASO with ICANN, and we'd still be having this discussion. The operator of the number registries is not what we're talking about. We're talking about the fact that we have an ASO, a supporting organization in ICANN, which serves to work on global policy and appoint ICANN board members.
Right. And that doesn't move to the operator of the
Not at
numbers
all.
registry?
The operator uses whatever global policies they are. For us, they use whatever IETF RFCs there are. IETF, for example, has no relationship with ICANN for global policy development, but it still has global registries that the IANA operates.
Understood.
We use ICANN to do the review and ratification of our global policy development process. And we use ICANN where we, through the ASO, participate in all their other activities, and where we appoint 2 board members to the ICANN board.
All of which to me seems like it's necessary because they're operating the numbers registry.
Completely independent fact. We could move the numbers registry. Contractors, when it comes up for renewal, could be moved if that's what the community wanted. Could be renewed with them if that's what it wanted. Could be switched to BTI, their subsidiary, if that's what the community wanted.
Okay. Am I the only one in the room that thinks this makes no sense? That
What?
these
That-
two things are completely separate, and that if we moved the number registry off into this other organization, it would continue to be governed by
Well,
what
remember,
the ICANN board ratifies?
The number registry was being done, not by us, but being done under contract with NTIA,
Understood.
okay, to ICANN. So they could have contracted it to someone else as well, and we wouldn't have had any control over that either.
Understood.
So, what do you want in your ASO relationship is the question of the consultation.
I think having the ASO continue to appoint ICANN board members and continue dealing with global policy such as it is, I think the last one was the last 5/8s.
Yes. We might have done a residual after that, remember? Residual?
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Take them all together,
The distribution of
make
the IANA.
spam, slice it up,
Yeah,
give it back.
The dribbling out of what's stuck in the IANA registry.
Actually, that's really Scrapple is what they made. It wasn't spam.
Yeah. Yeah, the IPv4 Scrapple
Right.
policy was the last one. You are correct.
Okay. So your thoughts on where we should go with the ASO?
My thoughts are we should definitely avoid the ASO getting involved in mission creep and expanding its tentacles further into miscellaneous ICANN processes, most of which don't affect us. We should shy away from ICANN paying additional attention to what we're doing as ICANN looks for further mission creep to spend money on since they have too much, and just kind of try and avoid that becoming any more complex than it already is.
Okay. Rear microphone.
Kevin Bloomberg, as affiliation as this is myself as a volunteer, I will declare I am one of the vice chairs of the ASOAC to help everybody there. There are 17 other recommendations which basically say make things easier for the communities to understand, stop with the mission creep, clean things up, take 20-year-old documents and revise them. There's a lot of good, solid work there that will make it easier for A, the community to understand, and B, for the volunteers to not get dragged into things that they don't need to be and they shouldn't be. The majority of the policy work for ICANN, all of the work at ICANN is domain policy, all related around domains. We're numbers, we do our policy work here. We don't need to be diving into that. We don't need to be creeped into those types of things. I think my personal view is when we talk about timelines and you talk about that list you had there, John, I would like to see an effective cleanup of the responsibilities. I would like to see it done over time. I don't want to see us torpedo out of frustration a relationship that we've had for many years. I want to see us doing more consistent, simplified workloads that are related to the numbers community, which is just saying, unfortunately, no to a lot of the requests, which they're asking out of commitment and out of nicety, but that I don't have the time as a volunteer in the given years to deal with. But I believe that it's an important relationship. I think that there's an important credibility between, and it's good to be a part of the ecosystem. How attached we are to the ecosystem is a different issue in this to me. But I think, I don't want to, like I said, throw out, because I've seen some of those things, I don't want to throw out the relationship, go somewhere completely different out of frustration when we've got a path of 17 things to clean up. That's my high-level view of this.
Maintain and clean up the existing relationship.
And at the next review, which is in going to be 4.25 years now, if there hasn't been that cleanup and it hasn't happened, then we know going into it that that's going to be the expectation.
Excellent. Front microphone? I was looking for a remote or panel. No?
Remote. Jason Schiller, ASOAC. The ICANN Board of Directors ratifying global policy necessitates the ASOAC shepherding global policy. Interfacing with the ICANN Board of Directors would ratify of global WRT, ratification of global policy, and oversight of the ICANN Board of Directors, WRT, ratification of global policy. As such, this needs to be completed with the ICANN system, which results in a lot of ICANN work, which is not germane to the numbers community because ICANN treats the ASO like any other supporting organization. To do what Owen suggests, continued participation with ICANN and no mission creep requires ICANN to recognize that we are not a regular supporting organization, that policy development, transparency, diversity, etc. happens in the RIR system.
Okay, very good. Front microphone?
David Farmer, University of Minnesota. So this consultation is about the structure. And so my comments on the structure is that the ASO NRO structure makes no sense to laymen and only confuses people, and heck, even confuses people that kind of know what's going on. So from a structure perspective, I'd like to see that simplified.
Okay. At a high level, if every time we say ASO, we say NRO, and every time we say ASONC, ASOAC, we say NRO Number Council, then everything sounds a little simpler, but nobody has changed roles.
Yeah.
The NRO participates in ICANN, the NRO Number Council, as the ASOAC, currently works on global policy ratification, appoints board members, and gets invited to many other ICANN things because it's a supporting organization.
And I think we're just getting wrapped around the axle with names of things, but this just proves names are important.
So let me ask, the earlier speaker said they maintain the relationship but go to simplify. Is that what you're saying, but also make sure you simplify the names?
I think so, because
Okay.
the two names or the interchangeable names just adds to the confusion and the complexity and makes it seem harder than it is, actually, I think.
Right. The fact that you're worried about the names used in the relationship, though, means you want to keep the relationship. Otherwise, you wouldn't be worried about them.
I believe so.
Okay. Very good. That's what I'm checking. Just
Yeah.
trying to understand what you're saying, okay?
Well, let's put it this way. To me, simplifying it's the important thing.
Yep.
I don't particularly want to eliminate any of the relationships, but if the only way to simplify it
Got
was
it.
to eliminate some of the relationships, then abandon some of the relationships.
Got it. Okay. Very good. Microphones remain open. This is the structure of the RIRs interacting with ICANN as the ASO. It affects all of us, and I've only seen a few people at the microphones, but I see someone approaching. Yes.
Alyssa Morris Ibera, Aaron AAC. So I don't think that the relationship needs to be eliminated entirely, but as Kevin was saying, it certainly needs to be cleaned up, and volunteers don't need to be dragged into all of the address supporting organization work that they are currently dragged into because it does not apply to us. Whether that means that we just call it the NRO-NC and they exist in some new capacity with a relationship with ICANN, I don't know if we need to appoint board seats if that's something that this community still wants. But those are my thoughts on it, and they're
Okay.
on the consultation list.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Remote comments up front? Yes, microphone.
Owen DeLong, I'll take one more crack at, Jason refers to normal supporting organizations versus the ASO. Correct me if I'm wrong, the other two supporting organizations are the Global Name Supporting Organization and the Country Code Name Supporting
Correct.
Organization, and that's it.
Correct.
So referring to the other two as, quote, normal supporting organizations versus us as the address supporting organization strikes me as a little bit odd. They're all three odd ducks in their own respect in each case.
Let me elaborate. So the SOs are also referred to commonly in the phrase SO/AC, as in supporting organization / advisory council. And there's a bunch of ACs. ALAC, the at-large community. Just you can find the GAC is another one. And so when you take those collectively, ICANN has many what they refer to as constituencies. And many of the ICANN processes are cross-community in nature that involve all the constituencies, because you would not hold a engagement on some topic and leave one out. They would be, you left me out, I'm slighted, how horrible. So when there's a discussion about international character sets and domain names, and there's a cross-community working group on it, all the SOACs get invited. When there's a discussion about ICANN staff accountability, and it's a cross-community working group on that, all the SOs and ACs get invited. This means that while we may be one of 3 SOs and ACs, we are also the only maybe one of 3 SOs. We are also the only party in the list of all the SOs and ACs that work on number policy, not name policy, and in that way we are sort of the odd duck out how everyone else considers an SO or an AC. I'm just giving you the perspective from within ICANN, and you can sort of read the review report and get more color on that.
Yeah, I have read the review report, believe it or not, and one would potentially argue that the GAC may have some interest in numbers policy, as
Sure.
they've certainly expressed opinions on who is in multiple forms as it relates to numbers. We've got the Public Safety Working Group of the GAC telling us more who is, and we've got the EU wackos in GDPR land saying less who is, and it's always so wonderful to get such clear direction from the GAC.
So just to clarify one little thing, we actually do a lot with ICANN. So for example, we do occasionally present in front of the GAC. We do work occasionally with they like the Internet Health Identifier initiative that Paul talked about, where they're trying to measure how current and accurate are the registries. We, as RIRs, are all participating in that. We don't need to be an SO or AC to participate or engage with ICANN.
Sure.
The IETF participates in many of those same activities as well, and it's participating as, quote, the IETF, quote. They don't have an alternate name in ICANN land. So this is a question of what should our relationship be with ICANN? Should we be doing anything with them, all these things? How should the ASO evolve to cover that? And it's not necessarily the case one way or another that changing the ASO means less or more engagement. So if you're proposing changing the ASO structure and you specifically mean do less with ICANN, you need to say that, because we still do a lot of things with ICANN.
Yeah, and I'm not sure I want to curtail any of the things we're doing with ICANN as long as this odd 3-way structure remains in place necessarily. I could see, wanting to eventually render ICANN an irrelevant party in that and having it become a 2-way structure, and at that point it becomes questionable whether there's a need to maintain that involvement in ICANN, but that's obviously not directly related at this time. But for now, I think we need to continue the current level of engagement with ICANN. I think we need to avoid scope creep. The 3 things that I'm most concerned that we continue to involve ourselves in with ICANN is we should, through the ASO, continue to pay attention to how ICANN spends money. Since we contribute some fraction of the ICANN budget, I realize not a significant fraction from ICANN's perspective, but certainly significant from the RIR perspective in terms of where it falls on our balance sheet. We should continue to engage on global policy as applies to number resources, which, and we should continue to appoint board members because, well, that's one of our primary ways to try and twist screws on ICANN, both absorbing large quantities of money they don't know what to do with and then coming up with creative ways to foul up what they didn't then do with that money. So,
Can I ask a question about your first? The other second two are perfectly
Sure.
understandable. The first one, which is pay attention to how ICANN spends money. It's interesting. We've been contributing the same amount every year to ICANN since inception. The total amount is $823,000. 2 years ago, with the IANA stewardship transition, we specifically identified $675,000 and said, this is for the IANA, this is for the SLA operations, SLA, service level agreement for the IANA numbering services. The rest is our ASO contribution. So instead of contributing $823,000 per year, we're contributing just $140 some odd per year, and $675 is for the IANA. We don't pay a lot of attention to how ICANN spends money because ICANN has many, many, many people paying attention to it, many, many meetings paying attention to it that go on for many, many months. There's a whole process that's multi-year on ICANN priorities and budget that's done with the community. We would have to spend money to staff that process of monitoring that. And I guess I'm wondering, is that what you want us to do? Because historically, Aaron has said, no, we should not pay any attention to how ICANN spends money. We just shouldn't let them have more.
that works.
Well, I want to be clear, because if that's not what we should be doing, you need to be very clear.
No, I think for now that works. I think it might be nice to pay some attention, for example, to what they're doing with the GTLD Make Money Fast slush fund, because there are some very creative and destructive proposals in that.
So, and I
area.
want to be clear, we can do that. But when Aaron's there, we have representatives like Kevin and Louis Lee, Jason, they don't have a portfolio from this community on what to say in that discussion. We have not had an Aaron community process for them to have a voice to say the Aaron community believes this about the GTLD slush fund activities. So we actually tell them, don't speak because we don't know who you're speaking on behalf of. It's not this community because I haven't done an engagement. Are you saying they should be?
I'm saying we should perhaps
We should hold
attempt
consultations on.
to get some engagement on that, yes.
This community should have meetings to discuss our positions on ICANN DNS matters.
I don't know that it needs to be meetings so much as we have the Aaron consult list, and this is going on at ICANN. If you have an opinion, you may wish to provide guidance to the ASOAC, who represents you at ICANN for this purpose.
Okay, got it. I just want a perspective, Owen. ICANN has at any given moment several dozen consultations open. We would need to add staff to engage the Aaron consult list to get your positions, to engage with the other IRs, to take a view which represents the community to ICANN. Are you willing to fund the additional staff?
I'm not necessarily in favor of adding staff for this purpose.
Well, it's a lot
but
of staff. I want to be clear.
I-
You're talking about
I-
engaging with an organization.
Well,
that,
you're assuming an all or nothing
that's what I'm
on
asking.
this,
How do
and
we
I'm-
know?
And I'm saying that I believe that the Aaron staff that's currently engaged in ICANN processes is perfectly capable of knowing which consultations may be of interest to this community above the normal threshold of let the community figure it out for themselves, and perfectly capable of bringing those,
Got it.
I would estimate 1 to 3 per year to the Aaron Consult mailing list.
Got it.
Without
Okay.
adding additional staff.
Got it. Back microphone?
No? Oh, there's my point. Kevin Bloomberg, that doesn't represent the community when I'm at an ICANN because I don't speak, I haven't been given that ability, and I'm fine with that. I am there in this case appointed by the ARIN board with a very specific purpose. Global policy comes along, do what I'm supposed to do in the procedures list. Don't have the right procedures, make sure the procedures exist. Board members, got 2 of them to appoint, take care of that. I'm not there as a representative of the ARIN community because there's 20,000 community members and I haven't been given any speaking ability in that regard, and I wouldn't want it. What I can say is, Owen, that doing nothing is a lot of work in the ICANN community. You're asking for a little bit of something, which is a huge amount of work. I am, and this is my own feedback, I am unbelievably, I had no idea the amount of work that goes in and the planning. I realize that being as part of a global organization has more to it. But expanding in any way, shape, or form, the scope doesn't creep a little bit. It is a downhill luge of work. So when I say clean up, it's focus on the numbers. We are going there for the numbers community, and that's all I want to be dealing with.
Just for clarity, so I have authority to speak on behalf of all of you. You didn't realize that. Scary, very scary. I do on occasion, but only to the extent that what ICANN is doing may endanger our mission. Okay? I'll speak at any organization that's doing something that interferes with our mission as an Internet Number Registry System participant. But that's it. And that generally doesn't go into consultations about names, name policy, fees, new GTLDs or anything like that. So I just want to let you know, if you think I'm there representing what Owen thinks about name policy, I'm very sorry. I am there making sure that nothing they do would impact our ability to carry our mission, if that helps clarify. Back microphone.
John, thank you.
Yes.
Dima Burkov, just from the net. I don't want to overestimate all this review and so on. I want to remind you that we began this game with this organization, which is now named as ICANN, from different point of view. Just we decided to support our friends.
Right.
Some of our friends who were protocol support organization decided
Right.
to allow ICANN run their own way. And I think they were right. Unfortunately, we are still involved in this game. We created absolutely artificial structure. Sorry, people, this structure became more stronger through these years. Just reminders, our number council and address council. What I expect from this review after, because it was a moment when we can change and to minimize our relationship. Don't be involved in this new game with new bureaucracy, with new lawyers, with new expenses, because we will be involved if we will support any step.
Right.
And practically, especially after discussion in the PNIC meeting, I began to think that why we have so large number council?
Okay.
It looks it should be split, cut, because it looks for me for representative, for contacts with ICANN. For us, it will be enough 5 here who are nominated by boards, and 5 number councils who elected by community. I think it's enough.
Yeah, understood.
And
So,
it's my
got it.
vision.
Okay, very nice. Thank you. I'm going to start closing the mics on this. So last chance, remote participants, local people. Last chance, last call. Microphones are now closed. I'd like to thank everyone for participation. I am going to do 2 things. I'm going to attempt to write up this discussion, the high points, and I will post it to ARIN Consult. But I'm going to get it wrong. See, I'm going to tell you now, I'm going to get it wrong. And if you have strong views, you should take the opportunity to express them directly on ARIN Consult, because I almost certainly won't get them reflected when I try to do a summary of the room. Please, you have 2 more weeks, and then we're going to have to explain to the other RIRs what our position is. The Iron Board will, I'll write something, the Iron Board will look it over and help me edit it, and then that will be the numbers community position from the Iron region. Eventually, we're going to have to try to get all 5 RIR communities on the same page, and that will be an exciting process. We need to figure out how that will happen. But it first starts with us forming one here. So I will write a summary of today's discussion. I also expect anyone who has strong views to make those views individually known so that they're not omitted when we try to summarize the whole thing. Okay, that concludes the consultation. Yes?
David Farmer, University of Minnesota. The consultations going on in the other RIRs, is there, it would be helpful for me to know what they're talking about, just thinking about it.
Sure. So, in a perfect world with unicorns and rainbows,
Yeah.
this would all be happening at the same time, and we would all end up pointing at the same direction, okay? It's apparent that's not happening coming out of the gate. So there will be a chance to take the results of each of the RIR when each RIR has results, and we will cross-pollinate. But we have to wait because, you know, APNIC started before us. They're a little ahead for what their community was talking about. RIPE's going to be starting this and moving. It's a work in progress.
Yeah.
But right now, I wouldn't want to try to summarize what's going on in another community because we don't know where they're going to end up.
I think more what I was trying to get at is it would be unfortunate for the end of the process to be we've all done our separate things and we haven't done anything to mush them together.
Oh, no. So we were hoping maybe that everyone would converge on an initial, like, straw man. That's not happening. So we're going to go to initial positions, and that will be the start of a process.
Okay.
It might be the start of a process where, you know, the 5 RIRs and the NRO EC can sit down and say, well, this is the sweet spot. It may be a process where we're so far away we go, okay, we've got to spin up a community effort like we did with the CRISP team to draft one. We don't know because we don't know where the 5, but those 5 will be initial positions of a potentially lengthy process. They may be closer than who knows? They could
One
be
can
close.
hope they'll be close,
One could
but-
hope. But we wanted to have them hopefully all come out of the gate looking the same way, and the communities are in significantly different places, okay? Yes, Owen,
I apologize for coming up after, but it's a response to what you just said.
of course.
If we're going to spin up something like the CRISP team, can we
Yep.
try and find a way to pay for it out of one of the various IANA slush funds instead of the RIR budget this time?
Yeah, that's an interesting thought, okay? I will take that back to the other RIRs. We can always give them less. The contribution for the ASO is a voluntary contribution. It's been the same since the very beginning, minus what we just changed for IANA operations. The remainder is the same. It is a little harsh to say this year we're giving you less because we're thinking about our long-term relationship with you. You might want to think about the messaging of that, but I mean, that's effectively what you'd be saying. I would not expect to be able to give them the same amount and have them pay for it out of one of their funds because they have a multi-year budget process. We would have had to start 2 years ago to have that come out the other side. Okay? Does that make any sense?